The reason you procrastinate is not what you think. Procrastination isn't lazy at all, not on the surface at least. You have to define whether or not it's lazy, but for most high performers work at a rate and a level that most people don't work at. And so they're not always so busy, but they're also so active and stacking upon stacking upon stacking of time, energy, and efforts, giving all that they have to every single moment. Even if it's just recording a video in front of the camera, the energy level is at 1,000%. I always say the give a shit factor is 1,000% at everything they do. That's what makes them successful. Guess what? Procrastination is not something that they're trying to do, and laziness is not something that's actually in their vocabulary. Laziness is something that they feel when they take a moment to breathe and they relax because they're not used to doing. Procrastination is really a set of prioritization and some things that are less important not getting done until things that are more important are getting done. And if you're a high performer, you know what I mean. Look, we can talk about all different types of high performers. Most working mothers or mothers in general are high performers. What you get done in a day, I look back to my mother growing up, working full time as a paralegal, working extra hours every single night above an 8-hour day, then coming home, cooking dinner, getting lunches, doing laundry, like unbelievable amount. High performing isn't something that I just got to witness, from reading books. I got to witness it firsthand every day in my life growing up, and I am of the same cloth. I've always been someone who has been busy, who has been active, who has had more on a to-do list than I can actually get done in a day, a week, sometimes even a year. Now, I'm not complaining to you. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the stacking. I love the giving 100%, 1,000%, whatever the number is. I love it. And I love watching my mom work still every day and give everything she's got to the world. I love it. But here's what I learned. When people look at the word procrastination and they couple it with lazy, as somebody that lives in a high performance world surrounded by lots of high performers, I can tell you they're not lazy at all. The first thing is they have to know their limits. And sometimes high performers do something that feels lazy. They breathe, they take a moment, they rest, they're overwhelmed. Lots of moments exist in a high performance life that equal overwhelm. Understanding the limits of you as an individual and when that's gonna come, and knowing that sometimes just resting is okay. I got an infrared sauna recently, and I was telling the story earlier, but it's a great story. And I had to convince myself that stacking this as a part of my morning routine was of value. It's 20 to 30 minutes before I do a cold plunge, which is 3 to 4 minutes. Here's the key component. It's about 34 minutes on average total. During that 34 minutes, I'm meditating, I'm praying, I'm relaxing. I felt lazy the first couple times I did it. I felt like I was starting my day too late. I felt like I was actually doing the wrong thing. I had to convince myself I wasn't procrastinating on bigger things that were bigger priorities. I was actually doing the opposite. I was prioritizing and putting myself first. I was creating a way to understand, a way to be limitless, not hit a limit. See, this is a really, really big point. Understanding what makes you click and that self-awareness can be very valuable. But reframing it in your brain to be something successful for you is all that high performers sometimes need to do. They have to make it multifaceted to make it valuable. But if you're able to actually just relax, listen to the birds for a couple minutes, be present, it's amazing the recharge that you get from that. This also brings up another really important fact, and that is when you don't know your limits or you push yourself too hard, you actually have to start creating moments inside of the busyness or inside of the limits that make you successful. Give you an example. There are many days where you go from doing a video like this, going on 3 Zooms back to back, going into a meeting, a very intense, important meeting that has to do with humans and really important topics, and you're emotionally drained, and you pick up your kid and you go to soccer practice and there's no break. But a couple nights ago, we had one of those days, I had one of those days, and it was an 1.5-hour practice, and I hit the local Italian restaurant, which was phenomenal. I grabbed a glass of wine. I had one of my favorite dinners, a veal saltimbocca. It was amazing. I got a to-go order for my wife. I took a moment to breathe, to pause. I didn't sit in my car and answer emails like I do a lot of times. I didn't look at all the things I had to get done. I just took a break inside of a busy moment. Now, had I been home? No. Had I changed my clothes? No. Had I done the things that most people want to do when they want to relax? Absolutely not. I stacked one more thing in to the schedule, but that stacking allowed me to breathe. I do it on the front end and back end of trips. When you travel enough, if you don't build time to breathe inside of your travel, it can be quite overwhelming. I don't like to travel on the same day that I have to do something. So if I have a meeting on a Wednesday, I try to go in Tuesday night just so that I can have a fresh morning to eat a breakfast, go to the gym, do whatever it needs to do to make me feel like I kept my morning routine, to make me feel like I'm in control of that level of the day. Why is that important? Because procrastination has nothing to do with what I'm doing. I'm not putting off travel for another day. I'm not putting off something that I could be getting done today. I'm not lazy in any capacity. You're not lazy in any capacity. What you're doing is the most important thing, and it's called self-care. Knowing your limits, creating really special moments inside of the busyness. We do it with travel all the time. Sometimes you're traveling for work and the family's coming with you, and you create something super fun or super cool inside of it. It doesn't mean that you're not busy. It doesn't mean that there wasn't another reason you were making that trip, but you can have unbelievable moments in some of those simple times. And I think that it's extremely valuable for high performers to know that they're not lazy at all. And you're not procrastinating. You're just creating space. Sometimes your body gets so overwhelmed, you just have to stop. And what's funny is some days you can't actually get out in front of it. I do know that there are times in my life where I wake up on a Saturday and I have nothing to do. Literally. Now, is that real? No, I have tons to do. But I have nothing I have to do that day. And I end up fiddling around all day long getting nothing done. And guess what? Sometimes that feels really, really good. It feels really good to do nothing every once in a while when you are always doing 27 things. So you have to justify that as something that's okay. The most important key to procrastination and not being lazy is actually just prioritization. Look, if you're a high performer, you live your life in nothing but priority. You every day make a decision of what's more important right now and what can wait. If you're ADHD, you only have the time that is either now or not now. It's either now or not now. Everything can be procrastinated if it's not needed right. Building your day in and around the priority is so valuable. When you can build your day in and around the priority, or you can constantly reshuffle things like high performers have to do, you're not procrastinating on the things you're not getting done. You and I both know there's no way you can get everything done on that list. You and I both know there's no way to give all of your time to everybody. You and I both know there's no way to be on this board and that board and this board and change the community if you're not prioritizing all the time. Reshuffling, reprioritizing is probably the number one skill there. Outside of knowing your limits, outside of building some fun and some moments inside of the busyness, prioritization can reshuffle the day to feel successful every single day. And guess what? It's okay to be lazy every once in a while. Procrastinating, if you're a high performer, isn't lazy at all. It's actually necessary at times. But if you're prioritizing and you're building those moments and you know your limits, I think it's valuable. I love the example I got from Jim Quick a couple of months ago. I was at an event and Jim used this example and I think it's so good. He said that introverts and extroverts, if you think of them as having a certain number of chips and each day they have a certain number they can give away. So introverts have 5 chips. Every day they start the day off with 5 chips. And every personal interaction, they give a chip away. If you give all your chips away by 9 a.m. in the morning and you're introverted, you have no time, energy, or effort that you can give anybody else the rest of the day. It's time for a recharge. It's time for awareness, right? Meanwhile, extroverts, this was a great example, and I live in this world, they start the day with 0 chips. And every interaction gives them a new chip, and they build more and more energy off of all those chips. What happens to a lot of the extroverts as they build and build and build and build the energy? They crash. At some point in time, they crash. So knowing their limit of how many chips really helps in a day versus how many they could actually take until they crash is another big benefit, because that's where the recharges come in. Having alone time, having thinking time, having reprioritization time, using my 4 quadrants is a great way to reshuffle and reprioritize. It's thinking time, but these are the things that I use personally so that I don't just keep stacking and stacking until I say, wow, this is great, and then I crash. I love that analogy, and Jim has a book out called Limitless, and if you haven't looked at it, it's a great one to look at. but I really believe that that example defines a lot of high performers. You could be one of those two areas. High performers aren't always extroverts. A lot of high performers are introverted, but understanding what makes you successful can make all the difference in the world. So I'm coming to you as somebody that does this all the time. I fail all the time. Every day when I pull into the driveway and I get into the garage, I usually take 1 to 2 minutes to take a deep breath and relax. Reshuffle, resurface what's most important. And it's not what happened in the day. It's what's happening in that house. What's happening with my family. What's happening with the people I do all I do for. And sometimes I have to reshuffle that in my brain and take a pause to just make sure I remember it. Because we all go through that. When you're busy and you're working and you're active, sometimes you have to take that time to look back on what you've been successful at. And usually what you're most successful at lies right in front of you, just wanting a little bit more time. So a deep breath and a turning off of the car and a walking in can make all the difference in the world. Are you a high performer? How do you do this? How do you make procrastination not a part of your day? Is procrastination lazy to you? Do you struggle with lazy days? How do you feel and how do you deal with that? I'd love to know. Share, like, subscribe, and tell everybody you know that procrastination isn't lazy if you're a high performer.